So how do we build an MVP? What steps do we do? Well, we got some good news, we got some bad news here. The good news for building an MVP is that it's very easy to build an inexpensive MVP. Okay? The bad news is that it's also very easy to build a very expensive MVP. And this is where a lot of businesses get in a lot of trouble, is that it is very, very easy to spend a lot of money making an MVP. We want to arm you guys with the tools and tactics to avoid some of those mistakes. And so I spent 2 years being an entrepreneur in residence at ATDC and talked to literally hundreds of companies that were going through early stage product development. And here are the 3 mistakes that I've seen when it comes to companies that are early in their product development journey. And I hope everybody gets a little bit from this here. This is lessons learned from hundreds of companies in Atlanta. Okay. Number 1 mistake is building without a technical lead. I also call this kind of the outsourcing problem. I can't tell you how many companies have spent tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars outsourcing their MVP development to a third party. I'll talk about this in another slide as well when we talk about technical leads, but if you're building a piece of software and no one on your team understands software, they don't have to be a developer, but if no one can manage a development team for you, outsourcing that solution is going to be very expensive, very time consuming, and 9 times out of 10 not lead to the results that you want to get. Second mistake is thinking too big, and I'd recommend thinking small and thinking in phases, okay? Everybody has a big idea, but when it comes to implementing the product, you do need to think small. Think in bite-sized pieces of things that can be developed and tested before we build additional phases. And so I've seen dozens of companies invest a lot of money into large, all-encompassing platforms, only to introduce the platform and have the platform be too complicated, or have it be designed for the wrong market, or have it be designed in such a way that it works great, but in order to support it, it would be too expensive. There's so many things that you have to do from MVP to your full-blown platform, whatever you want to build, that can be implemented in phases. So if the problem is big, sitting beneath the surface, it's really, think of it like an iceberg almost. You may see it as a mountain, and you want to get to the top of the mountain, but really sitting beneath the surface, it's really an iceberg. The bulk of the work is things that you can't see. So you need to break the idea down, think small, think in phases, and develop it in phases. So that's the second mistake. And the third mistake is rushing to build a product too early. And so that's why we started the talk today with really testing our assumptions around, do we need to build the product at all? Remember, we're going to ask, is there an existing product out there? If so, can we do it cheaper, better, or faster? If not, why doesn't the product exist? Are we the first to the market? Or maybe it's a bad idea. Or are we somewhere in between where we know that there's a similar product out there that's working in another industry? We want to develop a version of it for our target customers, our target market. Let's vet out those ideas before we build the product, and the product development is going to be the last thing that we do. Now, if anybody, I'll send this link out afterwards as well. I wrote a series of articles around advice for non-technical founders that address a lot of these concepts. Should you raise money to build your product if you're a non-technical founder? What is a technical lead, and why should I have a technical lead that's either on my team or very close to my team to help advise on product development? Should you hire a CTO? Do you need a CTO? When do you need a CTO? And finally, part 4, outsourcing and common pitfalls that companies run across when trying to outsource product development. And this is all designed around not making a decision whether or not you should or shouldn't outsource, but if you do, what to be aware of and how to get what you expect for the investment that you're going to make. So we're going to close today by talking about what are some ways we can build an MVP on the cheap. The first thing is you can build it yourself using no-code tools. And we'll talk about no-code in a second. Second thing is fake it until you make it. Okay. An MVP is all about doing the minimal amount of effort, faking as much of it as you can in order to deliver value to your customers so that you can get them to pay for it in terms of feedback. And that was that Mechanical Turk example. Behind the scenes, you can be doing the work manually. If on the front end, it can appear to be your product, you don't have to build the brain in yet. You can do that manually. And a lot of great products are developed that way. When it gets to the point that behind the scenes, there's so much manual work that you can't do it anymore, that's the idea of doing things that don't scale. Do that until you've proved the requirements, that you've validated the market, that you've identified your ideal customer profile, and then build the rest of it. So building a front end or building a layer that appears to be your product that enables you to get feedback before you build the guts out. Okay, so Mechanical Turk, think of that analogy. That's a great way to start with an MVP. And the third concept is what's called a technology-enabled service. Okay, so when we talked about the concept of who's the actual user, and is your customer buying the product, or are they buying the value or the results of the product? Well, if you can start off by being what's called a technology-enabled service, what this does is it says you're going to use the technology in order to deliver value to your customers. Your customers are going to buy the results, and you're going to provide that value to them using a piece of technology that you've built. And you can do that, and if you vet it out using your own technology, then maybe other companies like you may want to buy your technology as well. And this is often called eating your own dog food, if you ever heard that term. This goes back to an old Elpo commercial for Elpo dog food, where the owner actually ate the dog food to show how good it was, right? So if you're going to eat your own dog food, that means using your own product to provide value for yourself before you sell it to your customers, or doing it to validate what you're building is going to be of value because it's so good. Why wouldn't you use it yourself? Eating your own dog food. Start there is a great way to do it. Okay. And so what are no-code tools? Let me address this because you're going to hear this term a lot. No-code as a movement, no-code as a segment of technology has been getting a lot of traction lately because the no-code tools that are out there have become pretty good. So it's designed for non-developers to create apps and websites, online stores or databases, or do complicated integrations with little to no programming experience. Now, there's always been no-code tools out there for as long as I can remember. I've been doing software development for over 25 years. There's always been some type of a no-code solution. Except lately, they've been getting pretty good, and they've actually been able to provide some pretty powerful technology to be implemented and designed and created by people who aren't naturally trained or classically trained software developers. And there's a few great tools out there to research. Zapier is a great way to do integrations between many different data sources. You can do very, very complicated data integration using Zapier in a way that in the last few years had never been possible before. It's very, very great. Airtable is almost like a easy to use database that can be used for more than just storing data. Bubble is a great way to build apps and to build websites. Webflow is another way to build e-commerce stores in a way that doesn't require any programming. And Typeform is a great way to do surveys, to collect data from users, and do some complicated logic around that without having to program. It's great. Now, no-code has some pros and cons. I wanted to cover them real quickly here. No-code is great for an MVP. It's going to be, in fact, probably the way I would advise most people to build their MVP. It's easy to get started with, and it's going to provide a lot of flexibility. Okay. Now, the negative here, the con, is that no-code is going to give you less control of your data and the security around it, and they become very expensive at scale. And that makes sense, right? You're using other people's tools to build your product. You're going to be beholden to each piece of no-code technology throughout the life cycle of your product. Now, it's a great place to start, but you do want to replace those as you grow. And if you grow, that's probably a good problem to have, but it can get expensive. So let's balance those pros and cons. I would highly recommend using no-code solutions as a way to test your idea, develop your MVP. And some of these tools are getting so good that you could use them almost for version 1 of your product. Okay. Now we're going to close there with some QA. We've got some other questions that have come in. How can I get matched up with the right software developer to work on an MVP? Excellent question. Going back to some of those pitfalls that people make with outsourcing, let me address a few of those here real quickly, because this is the most common mistake that a lot of non-technical founders make when trying to build a product. I'd highly advise everybody that if you're building a business and you do think that a software or a piece of technology needs to be built, that you partner real closely with a trusted advisor or mentor that has some programming and technical experience. Now, they could either be actual programmers or developers, or maybe somebody who's managed technical teams before. I call these people technical leads. And you want them either part of your team or for them to be an advisor to your team. And if you do choose to engage with a software development shop, or you find somebody online to outsource it to, you want that person managing that team. I can't stress that strongly enough. You never want to manage a technical team if you're not a technical person yourself. And that's fine if you're not. There's plenty of people that you can partner with, that you can either do part-time, you can do fractional CTOs, all sorts of different ideas to make sure that somebody that has technical experience is managing the outsourced team on your behalf. Okay, so I'd strongly recommend you guys doing that. If you're having trouble finding that person, the best way to find a person that could act as a technical lead, either full-time or part-time, is to participate in the various technology communities across the city. If you're passionate about your idea and you're participating in the community, good people have a way of showing up. You can get people involved as a mentor, as an advisor, and if you want them to do more than just mentoring and advising, you actually want them to help manage some of your products, your projects, bring them in either as a technical co-founder or bring them in as a paid advisor and ask them to manage it for you. Solving that disconnect between non-technical founders and engineering teams is one of the biggest mistakes a lot of companies make when they decide to build their first product. The best way to do it is to partner with somebody as an advisor or mentor to help you through that. Final question, where can I find more information on building enterprise software? Shoot me a note afterwards, and then Denise or Jackie, if you ever want to do a class on enterprise software development, I've done that one for ATDC before. I'd be happy to share some thoughts on building enterprise software. My background has always been in predominantly building software for businesses, so happy to provide more advice on that. And if you have any questions specifically, you can find me on Twitter, and I think Denise and Jackie will send out my contact information afterwards. Happy to answer any questions over email or in person.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, Michael. What a fantastic job. Your information is so helpful to our student entrepreneurs. As they put together their ideas, they look forward to scaling their businesses. What stood out for me was your diagram that you had of the successful MVP. I thought I'm very visual. So having it just in visual context just hit it home for me. So it was a home run. So thank you so very much for doing that.
Thank you for everyone for attending. We're going to send out a copy of this presentation as a PDF to all the attendees. That'll include my contact information. I'm always down either at ATDC or down in Midtown most days. Happy to talk to anybody who needs additional help. I wish I could be down there more. I wish everybody was back in person doing what they love to do down at Georgia State or at Georgia Tech or at ATDC. I'm definitely feeling like we need to get out of the house, but we're in a bit of a weird year here. So I'd love to meet everybody in person. Unfortunately, we can't. We can do Zoom calls, conference calls. Happy to talk to anybody that needs help as we go through this. Denise and Jackie and George, thank you for having me.
All right, hold on, Michael. Just to remind everyone, you can follow ENI on our website at eni.gsu.edu. We also can be found on all our social media platforms at ENI-GSU. And then, of course, our YouTube channel at Entrepreneurship and Innovation Institute. Once again, thank you, thank you, thank you. Everyone have a safe rest of the day and be safe out there, all right?
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Appreciate it.